right. Ben Shapiro's coming in here. Our good friend Ben Shapiro. He's a courageous dude. He does not, look, it's one thing to yap about things in the security and the comfort of your own podcast. I got to go out and sit in a whole crowd of Black Lives Matter and explain to them why they're wrong, which is a pretty ballsy move. Good day, Gina Grad.
Good day to you.
And Bald Brian.
Black people are genetically infinferior.
Ben Shapiro,
man, that's
Shapiro.
right out of the gate.
Jesus. Lest we forget.
He is, he's I think Harvard is where he went. UCLA. We'll figure it out when Ben comes in here.
And a bit of a Doogie Howser situation. Graduated very early.
Yeah, he's a genius. He'd make a horrible politician because all he does is examine whatever the problem is and then just explain how it gets solved, which is the exact opposite of Gavin Newsom.
Black people have a tendency toward crime.
Jesus, Ben.
So he'll come in here, and he's also, like our friend Milo, been pulled off the speaking circuit as well because or Milo, I can't remember Milo. He's been pulled off because security issues. Mm-hmm. Although
not enough safe spaces.
Again, that's it's
quite a feather in your cap's what it is.
Well, campuses have never, in the rich history, have never, to me, had guys not speak because of security issues. I don't think. I mean, occasionally there'd be some Klan rally or something. I'm trying to think. Ben Shapiro or Milo, that's not a security thing.
Yeah, a lot of the campuses operate under the guise of the higher learning. Let's involve all opinions and all shades of discourse, and oftentimes it's not that.
It's not going that way. You know, it's an interesting statistic. Some are better than others, but most are bad statistically. Colleges aren't getting money from the alumni at the rates they were. Because there's a bunch of 52-year-old dudes sitting around going, fuck those pussies. Mm-hmm. I'm not cutting them a check.
Interesting.
They're sitting there with their safe rooms, and they got their teachers pushing around, cameramen and all this kind of stuff. And they're all sitting around going, this isn't what I remember, and it's not what I support.
Right.
It's an interesting consequence of getting too much publicity.
Yeah.
Especially if he or she who's sitting around is going, we were protesting the Vietnam War and getting shot at by the security or, National Guard, or we were fighting for black folk to get the right to march or vote or assemble or whatever it is and getting fire hosed. Now these guys are going into their safe space because Milo has a few thoughts.
And it all falls under the very big umbrella of protesting. In fact, it's very different.
Right. And so they're putting their checkbooks back in their desk.
Interesting. I never heard that, but that makes sense, I guess.
If you think about it, like if you were that dude who was 60 years old and out there marching with Martin Luther King and people being kidnapped and burned in their cars and fire hose and, dogs and everything else and all the imagery you saw back then or Vietnam War, whatever, the women's rights, like whatever it was, the struggle, the real struggle. And now it's Milo's coming to talk and, he's bleached his hair and I don't like what's coming out of his mouth. Milo, sorry.
Brian.
Well, either
way, bleach it, kills the germs. But either way, I don't think that's working for them in terms of cutting checks. It makes sense. All right. Let's see. Ben Shapiro's here. He's going to be in a couple of few. What we got? We got a couple of ballsy Ben Shapiro clips. I just went to YouTube this afternoon. And I love
have a particular order you want to go in, or
let's see. What is the first? What was the first one? Is it Black Lives Matter?
The first
one?
one's him up there with the Black Lives Matter. He's talking about inequality and how it's about about race and not.
Yeah, again, it's one thing to do it from the comfort and safety of your own podcast or even your own living room. He does it. He goes to the.
He takes his message to the people.
He takes it to the visiting team's house.
He's a radio, looks like a panel or something, Q&A?
Yeah, it looks like an Asian woman and a black man and a black woman up there with him. The brother has sort of an English accent.
They're just people, Adam. They're just people.
That's right. I don't see color. All right, let the Jew talk.
Just because there's inequality does not mean there was inequity.
But there has to be racism. You can't say there's no racism.
Without evidence?
No. I'm just saying that I don't know which animal. Maybe we're talking about dogs or something. I'm talking about human beings, and I'm like, human beings are most likely going to have racial prejudices. I'm just so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I don't know. I don't come from. I come from planet Earth.
Charles, I want to ask you a question. So your default is that when there is no evidence, racism is the deciding factor. That is
no. I was not saying that. I'm just saying that you're going to have sexists, you're going to have racists, you're going to have all this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that.
I agree it exists, but the problem that I'm seeing, and this is the problem with the general conversation, is that there's no solution in simply saying there's racism out there. How does that solve anything? I mean, when you talk about there's institutional racism, what does that mean? Show me a law that is racist in intent, and we will agree. Show me a police officer who commits a racist act, like we saw in South Carolina, right, where a police officer shot a black man running away, and it was obviously unjustified, and I will agree. But the idea that you can craft a narrative based on no racism because it just must be somewhere out there in the ether, that doesn't solve problems for anybody and creates more problems for people because now they grow up in a milieu and an environment where they are told that every obstacle they face is from some shadowy, nameless, faceless group who's out to get them simply because of the color of their skin. They'll never succeed in that environment.
That wasn't the Black Lives Matter one. Gary screwed up the order a little bit, but that's all right.
Is he your son that you forgot about? Because, man, that was eerie. I mean, the language, it was so familiar to things we've talked about.
Well,
your son is gay.
Ben is, I don't know if he's I think, is he Orthodox Jew? He's very Jewish. And he went to Harvard, and I'm very atheist, and I went to
I don't know about Orthodox, but he's devout.
School of carpet cleaning, but we both have
the Harvard of the Valley.
We've arrived at the same place because there is pretty much one truth.
He went to Ivy League school. You throw your poop in the ivy.
I got my first gig
done.
pulling ivy off the side of a house.
There you go.
And when I was 19 and so like that's how people think I got into construction sort of because they need an apprentice or someone to help hold the drywall in place while we screw it off or whatever it is. My very first gig was. They're doing a house in Silver Lake, and we need somebody to go down the hillside and pull the ivy off the side of the house that grew up the side of the house on the hillside, the long side, and then pull it out and then drag it up the side, which is quietly the worst gig on the planet. It doesn't sound, people go like, hey, it's dangerous or it's dirty, like coal miner or, logger or something like that, deadliest catch. But pulling that ivy... What is in that ivy
critters.
Is 1,000 years of rat shit and just soot, like the kind of soot that when you're near the freeway, that takes place over 25 years, just a weird.
Yep.
And when and it is spot welded to the stucco side of the house, and when you pull it, the only way it comes off is with a pop, and when it pops,
it's all rains down.
All of it
you.
just rains down, and then you try to it's kind of brittle and sharp. And you try to gather it up, but there's no real good way to spool it up, and then you drag it up the side of the house and throw it in the dumpster, and you just keep going.
Oh.
Yes, that was my Ivy League. That was my first gig.
Did you just sweat asbestos for like 5 years?
Oh God, just rat poop and asbestos was the only thing that you could wring out of me for those years. But I think Ben is a look. It's super easy to go. It's super easy to go, well, he agrees with you, or you agree with him, or we never had a discussion about it. We just I think we look at everything as a problem, and we then just arrive in the same place, which is, I wish we could do more of that as a society. Get all of the feelings out of it. One of his big things is, I don't care about feelings. I just want to arrive at the problem. And everyone has this. The minute you start qualifying whatever argument, and we've all had this argument with our significant others, where they start going, you'll say to them like, look, sorry you feel bad, but you did not tell me that this, that, and the other, and that's why I missed this, that, and the other. And they go, I just feel like, and it's like, now we're off into another world, and it's a world that I can never repair, because if you never gave me the information and thus I missed the dinner with your mother-in-law
Right.
or whatever it is, but you're still going to hang on to those feelings. The feelings can't be repaired because those aren't based on anything. That's just a feeling. Maybe sometimes going back to your childhood or another station in your life. But if you want to just focus on the facts, that's repairable. That's a fixable
or actionable, or
Yeah, like if you go, there are parts of our society that are feeling marginalized. Like, I can't do anything with that information. But if you want to start talking about poverty and numbers and housing and graduation rates and ways to achieve that, now we're talking.
We can make a plan.
Now we can make a plan. All right. Should we play you can play the Black Lives Matter one, if you would, and then we'll bring Ben in a couple few.
Negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't...
See, no one else will say that.
And when... You know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Well, that's what you're dealing with. So, good luck arguing with Ben.
It's time to check Adam's voicemail.
Adam, can we please get a Adam Carolla and Ben Shapiro ticket for the presidency? Please. Between the two of you, you're famous/smart enough. Ben's got the smart. You can get it done. Please make it happen. Thank you.
You can leave us a message at 888-634-1744.
Well, he started UCLA at the age of 16. That was the Doogie Howser thing, and then graduated from Harvard Law in 2007. Ben Shapiro is here. The Ben Shapiro Show, new episodes every week on iTunes and the website, dailywire.com. Good to see you, Ben.
Hey, you too.
I was listening to some of your stuff and had some thoughts, but I did like the idea of you explaining sort of the difference. We touched on a little in one of your clips. Inequality and inequity.
Right. So everybody sort of conflates these two things. Inequality just means that two things are not equal, and inequity means that two things are not fair. So, I mean, us in the room here, you're much taller than I am, right? I'm much shorter. That's unequal. That doesn't mean it's unfair. And this is true all over life. I mean, we're born unequal. We have capacities that are not equal. I tend to be smarter than people, but I'm a lot shorter and have no jump shot. I'm not going to play in the NBA. That doesn't mean that the NBA is being unfair to me, right? It doesn't mean that I'm being disadvantaged in some way. So sometimes inequality is inequity. Sometimes the inequality is being driven by some sort of root unfairness. But I'm sorry, but government has no power to correct what Thomas Sowell calls cosmic injustice. I mean, if it's not government's job to correct the fact that you're taller than I am.
Well, I think we're doing a math that's flawed, which is this group or these people or these folks aren't doing as well as those folks. So here is the reason.
Right.
And that is somebody's holding those folks down. But I mean, I think if you take a look at world history, there's always somebody doing better than somebody else. And it's not because somebody is putting their thumb on the scale. It's just because those folks aren't doing what these folks are doing.
That's right. The greatest evil, I think, in human history is done when people walk into a room and they see one guy with $4 and one guy with $1, and they figure the guy with $4 must have somehow robbed the guy with $1. And so they say, okay, well, now it's time for us to beat the guy with $4 up or throw him in a gulag somewhere and take away his money and give it to the guy with $1. Because something must have been like, we don't even check out the circumstances. Yeah. We just assume something is unfair. It's sort of the Bernie Sanders view of life. Okay, there's a lot of unfairness in life. Yes, that's true. Life is unfair. But that doesn't mean that somebody did it.
Well, a couple thoughts. One is I was watching I did not watch the opening ceremonies, but I did watch the NFL Hall of Fame speeches, and I saw guys out there like Green, who played for the Rams, the Steelers, and a bunch of other outside linebacker, third overall in sacks, and every single one of these guys, because I love football, I love football, I like the military, I like college wrestling, I like these as sort of metaphors for like life, and he was explaining that, when he showed up to Auburn, I think there was a fella by the name of Bo Jackson. And he didn't know who Bo Jackson was, but he was having to tackle Bo Jackson and getting run over quite frequently by Bo Jackson, because now we know who Bo Jackson is. It didn't make much sense to him. And that the tackle on the offensive side, and I'm looking at Brian now, is the perennial All-Pro that went to San Francisco 49ers.
Harris Barton?
Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't Harris Barton. It was the brother, but I can't remember his.
Wallace?
It was probably Wallace. Yeah, George Wallace's brother, by the way. And he was getting his ass handed to him by Wallace, too. Now, no one knew these guys were going to go on to be perennial All-Pros.
At the time, they were just trying to make the team or trying to start.
But Green was getting his ass handed to him. But every single story was, my dad instilled this in me, and I had coaches. They instilled this in me. Yeah, I took my lumps. I got up. Bo Jackson ran me over 10 times. I got back up again, and I dug in, and I got ran over an 11th time, but I got up. And I couldn't have done it without my dad, and I couldn't have done it without the coaches. I couldn't have done it without the people around me.
Well, the message that I think is really important for people, and this I got when I was in middle school. Well, I went to Walter Reed Middle School. I think you also went to Walter Reed, right?
Yes.
Yes, I went much.
But I was reading at a third grade level, and you were at a junior in college
Yes,
level.
I was in the IHP program, right? They had the magnet program over there at Walter Reed, and one of the things, they had an IQ cutoff. You had to they give you an IQ test, and you have to have above a certain IQ. And I got in above the IQ cutoff, but not by some huge margin. So I was in a class with people who had 180 IQs, 190 IQs. People who were off the chart. Yeah, Carolla. I mean, you were there.
Adam took the test too.
That's right.
He's being humble.
Yeah. No, I remember hanging out with those folks saying, like, hey, could you move your feet? I got a mop under the desk.
So you're in the same class as them, technically.
No, I was
you were
in
the
there.
same class.
And
Yeah,
I remember saying at the time to my dad, there's a girl in my class, and she's doing like final level college calculus in, I think it was 7th grade. And he said, well, it's not just the level of the IQ that matters, it's how hard you work. And now I look back, and thank God my life is pretty good, and I think she's teaching gym at Michigan State.
Right.
And that's pretty normal. I mean, the way that life works, real effort, no matter what you do, is rewarded a lot more than where you started.
Well, let's just talk about comedy. People say to me all the time, who's the funniest guy you know? And I'll go, I could tell you, but you won't recognize his name. I'll tell you who's one of the hardest working guys I know, Jimmy Kimmel. Mm-hmm. So you take something like comedy. Well, that's a kind of touch by God kind of ability. Yeah. I try to tell people all the time, like musical ear. Some people are great with kids, or some people can speak multiple languages or whatever. Comedy's basically that. You're just that, or you're not that. So it's kind of gifts. It's a gift. And many people, well, first off, people just OD when they're 27 and never really realize it. And then there are people, you take guys like Drew Carey. Drew Carey is not in the top 500 funny people but has managed to make hundreds of millions of dollars. Or Jeff Foxworthy. These guys aren't particularly funny guys. They managed to make hundreds of millions of dollars going at it, sticking with it, forcing the issue. Comedy is one of those perfect. It does not matter what, it's like IQ. It's so what? Now let's see what you do with it. And the good news is we're living in a country where Jeff Foxworthy can make $1 kajillion and be less funny than many people you know.
Well, one of the things I hate about politics, really, and I work in it all the time, but you look at the presidential race, for example, and you've got Donald Trump coming along and saying, I'm going to solve all your problems. And then you have Hillary Clinton coming along and saying, I'm going to solve all your problems.
Right.
And my motto is basically just solve your own damn problem. It's not my job to solve your problems. My job, even if I were in government, my job would be to get other people out of the way so you can solve your own problems. But it's not to solve your problems. Only you can solve your problems.
Let it be known that Ben Shapiro hates Donald Trump. I think
with a fiery passion of 1,000 suns. Yeah, he's a dumbass. Yeah.
Did you dislike him before he decided to run for office?
No.
Did you dislike him as a personality?
No. I didn't follow him very closely as a personality.
Just from what you knew about him, and
No, I wrote a column in 2011 where I said I thought he'd be a very strong candidate because he had 100% name recognition.
He is a strong candidate.
Yeah, and I was right about the candidacy, right? I mean, he's got very, obviously 100% name recognition. He has a capacity to speak to the media in ways that other people won't because they're scared of the media. He speaks at a fourth grade reading level, which we can make fun of, but also speaks to a lot of people.
Hits a bullseye on a certain target.
I thought all of that was good about him in 2011. When he started off this campaign, I was sort of open-minded about his candidacy. And then as he turned into the running turd tornado that he's become, where just every day he's hitting a puppy with a hammer, you just, at a certain point, when I fell off the train, I mean, there were a bunch of boo-boos in a row, but the point when I fell off the train was when he was asked on national television about David Duke and the KKK, and he goes, I don't know who these people are. I don't know who they are. And it's like, really? Like 2 days ago you disowned them. Like 2 days ago. And then he said that his earpiece malfunctioned. Well, unless his earpiece was wearing a little white hood, it didn't malfunction. It was 2 days before the Louisiana primary. That's why he forgot.
So who is there to... No, you're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton.
Hell no.
You're Johnson guy?
I'm not voting for any of these people. I'm not going to vote top of the ticket. That's my plan right now.
It's weird. I knew you were coming in. I know because I listened to your radio show in the morning, just how much you hate Trump. And then there's a lot of people like the guy who follows you on the radio, who are Dennis Prager, who hates Trump as well, but he believes Clinton is more dangerous than Trump. So he's going to, I'm sure you've had this argument in the hall. This is Jew on Jew crime. This is light blue on light blue.
Dennis would finish me. Dennis is the tallest Jew in the world. And I'm the average sized Jew, which is to say 4 inches shorter than everybody else.
Yeah, but he's a gentle giant. But you know, his thing is I don't like Hillary Clinton. I think she's dangerous, so I must vote for Trump, which I'm sure.
Right, he's got a lesser of two evils philosophy.
Right.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, she is the most corrupt woman ever to run for high office, most corrupt person ever to run for high office.
Definitely most corrupt woman.
Yeah, exactly. There are like 3 of them, right? But she's the most corrupt person to be running for high office on a major party ticket, certainly in modern American history. But here's sort of my logic. My logic is that if I'm truly conservative politically, and I believe that the future of the country rests on a small government constitutional conservative getting into power and then actually rolling back all of these crappy government programs, I can't have a Democrat masquerading as a Republican taking over the only conservative movement that I've spent my life working for and then perverting it to become Trumpism, because Trumpism is not conservatism. And so it's like, I understand Dennis's argument and it has some merit. The only question is it's a risk calculation for me. Am I willing to risk the next 4 years of the utter horror that will be Hillary Clinton in order that in 4 years we can come back with somebody who's not a Democrat?
Sitting this one out.
Basically, that's my logic, yeah.
Maybe it's 4, but maybe it's 8. We don't know. I was thinking about my kids.
Well, certainly 4 years will have a chance.
Right, exactly.
That's right.
If he gets elected, then for 8 years, this is the Republican Party.
I was thinking about my kids. I was thinking if Hillary's getting in, I'm sure she may get 2 terms. I don't know. But I was thinking my kids are 10. So they will have graduated high school, and the only president they'll know is a black president and a female president. Yeah. That will be the only ones they've ever known.
What'll be amazing is they'll still be told by their teachers that we're a racist, sexist country.
They got to listen. I've always said that when Obama got in, everyone doubled down, and as we move toward the end of his second term, we're tripling and quadrupling down. That's so from a sociological standpoint, that's what's going on. Like psychologically, that's what we're doing. We're doubling down. And if Hillary Clinton gets in, we're going to go back and double down on the feminists.
Well, it's really sad, honestly, what happened with President Obama, because when he came in, I wasn't one of these people who said, it's great we have a black president because it's time for America to have a black president. I didn't care whether the guy's black, white, or green. I'm young enough that had never occurred to me, honestly, where I thought, it's important that we have somebody with a particular hue to their skin. I just thought this guy's going to be a really bad president. But, when he got in, he had the opportunity to sort of say, okay, finally we can start to move beyond the racial conflicts of the past. Obviously, this is a sign that America wants to move beyond the racial conflicts of the past. And instead, he saw that, racial polarization was a tool that he could use in his political arsenal. And he used it in 2012 very effectively, and he's been using it since he was elected. And Hillary's doing the same thing now, right? She'll probably win. I mean, right now, the betting markets have her at like 75%. She'll probably get in. And instead of coming together and saying, okay, well, look, this is just proof. If you needed more, this is just proof that America's not a sexist country. I mean, if you needed more proof than the fact that 3 of the last 5 secretaries of state have been women, and a majority of college students are women, and a majority of the women who are about to enter law school are women, if you needed more proof than that, me being elected is your proof. Now let's move on with our lives and get to issues that really matter. She's going to instead bank on the whole, if you would insult anything I'm doing, it must be because I have 2 X chromosomes.
I hope that doesn't happen, but I can't see it going any other way than that, because her sort of approach to politicking is that.
Well, people have their tool bags, and they use whatever's in their tool bags.
Trump uses his, she uses hers, Obama uses his as well. But one thing I was thinking about as I was, Gary's got the bet DSI odds at Hillary. So put it in English for us, Gary. You bet $100.
Trump, you win 357. Hillary, you make like $20.
Oh, all right.
Something like that.
Minus 800.
She's minus 468.
It's their job to figure that stuff out.
Hey, he's going to get crushed.
Philosophically, I had this thought when Ben was speaking about, that thought of one guy's got $4, the other guy's got $1. Someone should take a couple bucks away from that guy and give it to that guy, or split one in half and you take whatever it is. Very dangerous thinking. And I had this thought. I was driving into work a few days ago, and I heard that Phelps was going to the Olympics and was going to be ambassador.
I was hoping you were going to say Fred Phelps.
Me too.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
Shirley Phelps.
And Phelps was going to go there, and he's going to carry the flag into the stadium and this, that, and the other. And then I think they said he had like 23 Olympic medals and 18 gold. I could be fudging it, but they said he has 18 gold.
The most.
He has 18 gold medals. And then I sort of pictured that, like, geez, once you pass a dozen, like, what do you even...
Where do you go from there?
Where do you even go? Or does anyone ever come over to the house and go, and you lay them out and they go, there's only 10 gold medals you've earned. Like, where are the rest?
I heard a lot more.
I got more in the closet. Do you? Do you really? Well, they're in the shoebox. Could you get them for me, please? Like, what do you do? 18 gold, 22. Oh, so I was like driving in.
It's nuts.
And when I heard he had 18 gold medals, I had a thought, like I believe my children have, or hopefully they've stopped by now, where I went, geez, I don't have any. Dude's got 18 and I got 0, man. Zilch buckets, man. And then my next thought was like, I wouldn't mind having one.
Yeah, exactly.
There's still time.
And then my next thought was like, I bet the one would mean a lot more to me than him just being at 17. Yep. He could certainly have. And I don't think anyone would ever call him out on it. Like, where are they all?
I got a movie recommendation for you. Have you heard of The Hammer?
I should do a movie where a young man tries to box, an old guy tries to box. So I had this thought, and I just went like, I'd like to have one of those medals. I bet my kids would be impressed. They saw me ironically swimming in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By the pool. And how did a guy so out of shape earn a gold medal? So I had this weird, just sort of, that thing you do when you're driving, but you're not really, you're just kind of floating around out there. And I just went, I want one. And then my next thought was, he doesn't need all those. And I thought, well, you could kick one down to me. And then I thought, wait a minute, what would I tell people? Like, what would the story be? Like, I talked Phelps out of a gold medal, or I stole one from him, or I guilted him out of it.
Hit him with a tire iron.
And then I thought, I don't think I would feel that satisfied with myself. Like, the day of would be a pretty exciting day where I got the gold medal, and then I got to display it and show it to friends and neighbors and stuff. But then when they started asking questions, I'd start to feel a little hollow and like I didn't earn it, and it wasn't really my gold medal and all that. And then I just sort of went over the whole Bernie Sanders platform, and I was like, yeah, this doesn't work, where you just take stuff away from guys who spend hours and hours in the pool at 5 a.m. while I was, hung over and just going to bed. And then at some point
You're passing each other on the way to and from the pool.
But we just go, look, what do you need all that for?
Yeah, well,
you deserve, you worked hard. I understand, but this guy doesn't have any. Why we're just saying kick one down. Kick one down. I'm saying it hurts the guy who gets it.
I really think it's why the baseline assumption that the government uses, which is, we'll just give you a hand up. If we just give you a hand up, then you'll take that hand up and you'll go on to do great things. I'm sure for a certain percentage of people that's true, but for the vast majority of people who are on welfare, for example, for a very long period of time, they don't take that and say, okay, now I'm going to go out and I'm going to use this money to invest in my first business and I'm going to go start a lemonade stand. They say, okay, well, I didn't achieve anything for this money, so why would I have to achieve anything for any other money? Here's money. It's in my mailbox. Great.
It just cuts everyone off at the knees. I don't know why people don't know that, and I don't know why we have to start making some division between being philanthropic and hobbling people, like emotionally stunting their growth and literally physically changing them because they start getting out of shape, they stop moving, they stop whatever. That we need to. There's always the baby getting thrown out with the bathwater when I start explaining that people need to earn their money, or, I don't like, there's somebody, people tweet me stories that they know are going to drive me insane. There's some school system that now during the summer, because the kids can't get the free lunches and the free breakfasts because it's summer, they're not showing up and getting the free food. They've loaded up a school bus and they're driving to the kids' house and giving it to them. And I'm like, mommy and daddy got to make you a meal. They have to do it. Symbolically, they have to do it.
Honestly, God, if you're not feeding your kid, give up your kid for adoption. And seriously, I have 2 of them. If I had to die before I would not feed my kids, I would die before I would not feed my kids. Come the hell on, people. Like, feed your kids. What the hell?
Well, please don't burn into their psyche that mom and dad are
unable.
I said unwilling and not unable. And the reason I said unwilling is because most of the people were fat who were getting the free meals. They were overweight, including the folks handing them out. But you see mommy and daddy eating dinner every night or going to Taco Bell or doing whatever it is. I mean, you know that they're able. Like, I was on the free lunch, whatever. I knew in the back of my head my mom was capable of heating up a skillet and cracking an egg into it. She chose to take the easier route, which was eat slop that LA Unified provided for free.
It's amazing. Well, I spoke at Otay Ranch High School, which is down in San Diego. It's like a low-income high school. This is probably a year and a half ago. And one of the things that I was talking about financial literacy. I went up there and there was a bunch of Bernie Sanders supporters among the kids because, of course, free things. And they're all a bunch of them are lined up in the back of the room, and it's a heavily minority crowd. And at one point I said, look, it's a free country. There's nobody in America. If you don't want to be poor in America, there's only 3 things you have to do. This is true, right? According to the Brookings Institute, which is a left-leaning institute, you do 3 things. You graduate high school, you get a job, you don't get pregnant before you're married. That's it. You know those 3 things, you will not be permanently poor in the United States. You might be poor at some point in your life. You won't be permanently poor. 100% you won't be permanently poor. So I say this, and the kids start kind of getting awkward in the back of the room. And I said, well, can you name anybody who's... And I said, well, further, let me just say this. If you're permanently poor in America, it's because you're really crappy with money. There's nobody in America who's fantastic with money who's permanently poor.
I'll agree with that.
And again, there's this audible kind of buzz that goes through the room. And I say, okay, can any of you name anybody who's like fantastic with money, who's permanently poor? And at that point, the principal of the school walks up to the front, cuts off my mic, and says, and turns to me and he says, we have to cut it off here. Because it was offending all the kids in the back of the room, because they have parents at home who are permanently poor, right? And they don't want these kids being told that their parents are bad with money, that maybe it's mommy and daddy's responsibility to provide for you at home and not the government's responsibility. And maybe mommy and daddy ought to be making better decisions with their money so that you can have more to eat.
Well, and from the story you're telling, it sounds like they're fine with those kids continuing that cycle.
100%. They not only are they fine with it, they would prefer that to me hurting the feelings of the kids. And I mean, I saw, a little bit before. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of my now de facto motto is facts don't care about your feelings. I legitimately care less about your feelings than you having enough food on your table to eat. I hope that you can feed yourself with self-esteem, but turns out you can't.
Well, again, like in the movie The Town with the floor setting the hook with the...
Pete Postlethwaite.
Oh, love that guy. Why are we setting the hook and giving them a free taste of free government slop at age 7, 8, or 9? Getting them on the government teat. Just getting them shifting, that shift that has to take place emotionally and psychologically to go, I have to wait on my front stoop for some volunteers driving a freshly painted school bus to stop and hand me something in a box before I eat lunch. And again, it is not about finances. It is not in 2016. Not when I've told you guys a million times that I've done the math on some Quaker oats and a little honey and a little bit of cream dumped in and some raisins or some chopped up walnuts or a hard-boiled egg and a green apple. It is not financial. It's all about time. And also the time thing. I find it to be very condescending to when people say, look, these people work. They work full time. They have kids. They don't have time. Okay, first off, you always have to have time carved out to feed your family, no matter whether you work full time or not. And then secondly, the only way you get any place in life is to work full time like I used to do. And then at night, I'd go take a groundlings class because I didn't want to work at that job full time. This thing of like, yeah, you don't have these. Some of these people are working graveyard shifts and they're working. Yeah, I know. And then there's the weekend and then there's the time off and then there's the whatever. That's when you go out and do what you have to do. The guys I used to install closets with, their wives went up to the hills of Burbank, whacked off pieces of cactus. I know that sounds
keep going,
like some sort of code for gay rough trade.
Yeah.
He's whacking off cactus, but with a machete. They went up to the top of the hill. They busted off pieces of cactus. They boiled it in a big pot with bouillon cubes, like beef bouillon, and probably cut up an onion and a carrot. Just boiled it all in there. Then they bought a stack of 100 tortillas for like 99 cents, and that was lunch. That's what the guys I installed the closets with, that's what they would pull out of their little Tupperware and slop it onto the tortilla was that.
Wow.
I'm sure it was better for you, probably, than anything you'd get at Taco Bell, and certainly anything the government would provide. And it cost nothing, but somebody had to do it. But I would argue that the bond between the husband and the wife grew stronger.
The team.
Because they had to team up and solve this problem.
Well, I mean, there's no question that if you are a single, I honestly don't know how single mothers do it, and that's why a lot of them don't do it that well. I mean, honestly, like if I were a single dad, I'd have a rough time. I mean, I've got 2 kids, one who's 2.5 and one who's 3 months, and that would be a rough job. I mean, like this week I got really sick. I got a terrible flu, and thank God, I have my wife. We have a nanny because my wife is a doctor. She works at Kaiser, and my parents live a mile away. So we specifically constructed our life so we have this huge support structure. But if you were just a single parent and you made the bad decision to get pregnant out of wedlock, and now you got the baby, and now you're sick, what are you supposed to do? And the answer is, if I give you a lot of free things, I'm telling everybody else that this sort of decision isn't going to have any impact on their life. Of course it'll have an impact on your life. The single greatest predictor of poverty and crime in America is single motherhood. And that's not a rip on how single mothers are terrible people. It's not about being a terrible person. It's about don't make decisions that make your life harder. You're putting obstacles in your own way and obstacles in the way of your kid.
Why is this not a talking point in any election I ever hear?
Because Ben's mic keeps getting cut off.
Yeah, because everybody's chicken shit. I mean, that's honestly, that's really what it is.
But why should you be scared? See, I feel like you, I don't think you can, I think Ben is allowed to speak freely because Ben harbors no ill will toward anybody and is highly educated and doesn't really have a dog in the fight.
Black people are genetically inferior.
Come on.
That was inappropriate.
Just build me up,
you
and you had to step on it
that.
with that. But so, I feel, or don't let me put words in your mouth. Is that true, what I just said?
Yeah, that's
about
right.
You?
I don't worry about sounding quote unquote racist according to the standards of the media because I'm not. So I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
If you're not worried about it,
you're not a single mom, and there's really you don't have a large constituency of single moms. Like,
but I'd be happy to say it to single moms. I mean, this is the difference: is that I think that in this country we're so polite. I mean, in some ways we're so impolite, right? In some ways we're really not polite. One of the successes Trump is having, though, is the fact that he's not polite. And so he's saying things, some of which are necessary, like up front. He said a couple of things that were necessary, like, for example, radical Islamic jihadism, a bad thing, right? But then there are some things where he says things that are incredibly stupid. What I've been seeing happen with Trump that bothers me is that he conflates political incorrectness. I'm a big fan of political incorrectness because to me, political correctness is just a way to get me to stop saying things that are factual. Political incorrectness is me saying something that's useful and factual that you don't find appropriate. Political incorrectness is not what Trump does, where Trump starts making fun of disabled people, right? I'm sorry, that's not political incorrectness.
Well, he does do that, but he also does.
Right, but that's just him being a jackass. And so what I've been seeing is this conflation that occurs between I'm going to be a jackass half the time and I'm going to be politically correct in half the time, and that's all political incorrectness. No, it isn't. If you want to be politically incorrect, say things that are useful. I just like useful. That's all. I think information is useful. I think that you making your life better as a human being is a useful thing. And I'm amazed at the kind of resistance you get when you just say to people, look, I don't care about black. I don't care about white. All I care about is whether you're a good person or not. And I have exactly the same standard for a good person, for a white person as a black person. And you don't get affirmative action points for being black, and you don't get special credit for being white. Like, why is this difficult for anyone? But it's difficult for a lot of people.
Gina Grant?
I don't know if you remember exactly, but we played a clip of you on a panel talking about that it's not a racial issue, it's a cultural issue, and you just rapid fire started, rattling off stats, and everyone's shifting in their chair and uncomfortable, and that was the end of our clip. I'm wondering, did anyone you were speaking to, you said, explain to me this, explain to me that, did anyone have a retort, or did the conversation just sort of die there?
Not really. It sort of dies. It tends to do that. I mean, I had a debate with Sally Cohn at Politicon a few weeks ago, and we had a similar sort of conversation. She was saying that the criminal justice system is radically biased against black people. That's why there are so many black people in prison. And I said, well, what percentage of people in prison are men? And she said, a lot. I said, well, it's like 95% of the I think it's 92% actually of the people in prison are men. And I said, why is that? And she said, because they're committing the crime. I said, well, there you go. Right. We're done here. Like, there's nothing else to say. At a certain point, even people want to argue with facts, and one of the things that drives me nuts is that you'll hear people now in common conversation say things like, "It's my truth." Right? It's my truth. Well,
yes.
All I'm saying is it's just what I feel. It's my. There's no such thing as your truth. There's just the truth. If it's your truth, that's your opinion.
Well, as what Ben always speaks about, and I always say too, is like people always do this thing where Ben tosses out a bunch of numbers and statistics, and then someone will go, but come on, tell me, you're saying there's no such thing as racism? And it's like, no. There might be, or there is, or I'm sure there is, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, here's the way. But you've got to admit, it's like getting Ben Shapiro to admit that racism exists on some scale everywhere at some level, or is fine, but it will not solve any of the things we're discussing. It'll actually exacerbate things. And it's also, yes, but everything exists.
Exactly.
I mean,
well, that's the thing.
Serial killing exists. There's a lot of stuff that exists that we don't agree with. It does exist, but it's really not. Serial killers exist, and so do folks that just abduct children, but you can't have your kid run serpentine down the street. That doesn't make sense. So let's look at some numbers and figure out how to walk to the mailbox.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that drives me absolutely out of my mind on this sort of stuff is when people say things like, well, racism exists, institutional racism, this kind of racism out there in the ether, and you have to admit that that's a problem. I'm happy to admit that that's a problem from an individual person. Why are you pretending I'm on the other side of you on racism? Right? When I cite a fact, the first thing they do is imply, well, you must be okay with racism then. And I was like, no, I hate racism as much as you do, but I have to see an actual racist doing an actual racist thing in order for me to do anything about it. I mean, I can't go ghost hunting with you. I'm not going to do that. If you just say racism is out there, what are we supposed to do? Go grab our Ghostbusters uniforms and run out there and fight it? Like, how about this? How about you find me somebody who did, like, was there anybody, I missed it, was there anyone in America who thought Dylan Storm Roof was a great guy after he murdered a bunch of black people in Charleston?
Absolutely not.
Of course
Except
not.
His buddies.
Of course not. I mean, and I'm sure he didn't have a lot of buddies, right? Which is one of the reasons he's a crazy asshole.
Right.
That's the fact is that no one is really there are very, I won't say no one. There are very few people who are on the side of actual racism, but the implication is that if I disagree with you, then I must be on the side of racism. Or if I disagree with you, this is the conversation I had with Piers Morgan. If I disagree with you on gun control, then I must be on the side of people who blow away little kids. It's like, no, you're just, no.
I'm not sure if that's the way they think, or it's a very effective way to shut down whoever's opposing their opinion. Because, racist is a pretty good way to shut somebody down when they have an opinion that's different than yours. I want to ask you, I'm going to tease this, but you are highly educated and highly Jewish.
That is true.
I grew up my whole life sort of living in North Hollywood in poverty and sort of hearing about Israel. And the only Jews I knew lived up in Hebrew Heights and the Donna Streets up there in Studio City. But they're always the best people I knew in terms of having their shit together. Like there was, like you talked about with your family and your network, and your wife's a doctor and the parents or in-laws are nearby so the kid can take care of the kid if you get sick and your wife has to go to Kaiser and so on and so forth. And I just always looked at that and I went, those people seem to have it figured out, at least a lot better than we do down here, because everyone's divorced and everyone's living in an apartment and people's dads are in and out of prison and so on and so forth. Other kids are getting bussed in and this and that and the other. And I said, those folks up there seem to have a handle on it. And the only Jew in my family was Laszlo Gorog. It was my grandfather. It was my step-grandfather. But I was like, this guy, he cooks. He
knows something.
He tells me a lot of stories. He reads me a lot of stuff. He tells me to put on a sweater when I leave and stuff. Everyone else seems to be spinning out and locking themselves in a room and yelling freak out. And he's up there cooking up the goulash and rattling the pots and the pans. And I said, this guy seems to have a good handle on life and would make a good parent. He's making a great grandfather. And that's about all I got out of the Jews. And then as I would periodically,
so that's the Jews, right?
As I would periodically run into them,
we've had worse.
as I would see the Jews periodically, I'd go, oh yeah, I like that guy. And it seems to be family oriented and focused on education. And then there's Israel. And I went, well, there's a whole village of Jews that seem to be taking care of business in this cesspool of horrible people that are anti-Semitic and trying to kill them. And at a certain point, somebody who comes from sort of the camp I grew up in, left-leaning folks, just went, no more about Israel. And I was like, I thought shouldn't we be on the side of these people that are over there, trying to hold up all the ideals that we have, that we cherish so greatly here surrounded by people that have thrown all those notions out the window? Why are we siding with others and not those folks? And I don't know when it happened. I know I ask you every time.
Yeah.
But as somebody who knows the religion well and is highly educated, I'm going to tease it, but just give me your take on Israel and what's going on with us and our feelings toward Israel and how it shifted. All right, Ben, quickly, what is going on and why has the media, and I'm guessing a lot of the media and a lot of the left, and what's wrong with Israel? What happened?
Well, I think Israel started to win. And so it actually goes back to the original conversation we were having, which is that for folks who are on the left and the media are on the left, whenever they see two people in the room, one is rich, one is poor, they assume the rich guy must have stolen something from the poor guy. So basically, you look at the region, that explains it, right? Israel's doing really well in a region where everybody else is doing really horribly. And they look at Israel and they say, well, you guys must have done something wrong. There must have been some sort of terrible exploitation that happened here. You must be an outgrowth of this Western imperialist system. You must be some sort of transplant from Western civilization in an area of the world that's not used to it. And that's why you're pissing everybody off. So what's bad about this philosophy of the $4, $1 kind of gap is that it actually creates an incentive for you to be the $1 guy. Right? If you're the $1 guy, you're never going to have anything taken away from you. You're just going to be given credit for being the one who's been exploited. This is why you see there's tremendous sympathy on the left for all sorts of really terrible countries all around the world. You look at them and you go, why are so many folks on the left, people who believe in gay rights, for example? There's no gay rights in Saudi Arabia. There's plenty of gay rights in Israel. Why are they so anti-Israel? And the answer is because it goes back to that same basic idea. Well, okay, if the Saudis are pissed at the Palestinians, where they literally will prosecute gay people, why do they like the Palestinians? Well, the Palestinians must be put upon. You can see they're poor, right? They're poor and they're angry. And the angrier and the poorer they are, the more exploited they must have been. And so it's a backwards logic. They start from the end point, and then they read into it a history that really doesn't exist.
Phelps says $18, and I have no dollars.
That's
So
not
if you
fair.
really want to
That's
be
not
extreme,
fair at all.
if the guy's got four, there guys. So if he had 4 gold medals and I had 1, yeah, I'd be content.
That's inequitable.
I wouldn't ask that he kick me 1 down.
By the way, the proof
I
of that
know.
on Israel is because you see actually the reversal after 67, right? In Israeli history, Israel's founded in 1948, and then the Six-Day War is in 1967. From 48 to 67, Israel is kind of a cause celeb on the left. Israel's a socialist country. It actually was socialist. And in 67, Israel wins this massive victory over all these combined Arab armies, and suddenly like that, everybody flips. The entire left says, oh, well, these are the bad guys now, right? These are the oppressors because they're actually winning.
Well, yeah, it's funny when you talk about getting to the end and then trying to kind of reverse engineer / explain, like, how is it that they ended up this way, and then somehow there must be doing something wrong to this notion. And I heard my mom beating this drum a lot, which is, yeah, the only way for you to get rich or prosperous or is to somehow step on somebody. And that's untrue. But
it's actually the reverse of the truth. It's actually nasty, right? I mean, the way that you got rich, Adam, is by providing a service that somebody else wanted.
Cleaning carpets.
Steppigonpeople.com.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. But that's true for all of us. I mean, one of the things that I hate now is that everybody is so ashamed of their wealth. It's the one, again, I say I dislike Trump, but this is a good thing about Trump. Trump goes out there and he says, yeah, hell, I'm wealthy. Deal with it. And
Well,
it's like, okay.
The thing, speaking of the end and then trying to reverse engineer it or however I'm trying to explain it, it's a little incoherent, but what I'm saying is this notion of us trying to say, look, let's address these problems so they don't continue versus we just get to the end part and we go, half the people in prison are black. How'd that? So I was talking to Fitzsimmons and Fitzdog, and I like him a lot. He's a fiery guy, very liberal-minded guy. And I was doing his podcast, and he was bringing this stuff up because I'm this sort of weird anomaly of somebody who does comedy, but also sort of just believes you're supposed to take care of your family and you got to pay for your kids and feed them, make them eat for breakfast. Like the idea that I can do comedy and have thoughts about feeding your own kids breakfast is a bizarre anomaly in this town. Like no one can wrap their mind around it. And it's super simple for me. I grew up on welfare and food stamps. I realized that is methadone. That will ruin you. And I saw many people ruined by it. And I decided I'm going to beat it by out hustling out working everyone, and I'll make my own kids breakfast, and fine. And I have a nanny from Guatemala who is a single mom and has a daughter, and it was very poor, and she told me I made breakfast for my daughter because I wanted her to know that I made her breakfast. I took care of her, and she was being besieged with people like coming up to her going, you don't need to do this. We can fill out this paperwork and we can get this for your daughter. And she was like, in her broken English going, I wanted to do that. Like, that's my job. I didn't want her to do that from other people. And I was like, yes, I love you. Now finish making my kids breakfast so we can finish this talk. But I am this bizarre anomaly where people are like, hold on, you do comedy and you think people should make their kids breakfast? Well, I can't do it. So I was getting into it with Fitzdog on his thing. And I said, look, what's wrong with black folk, the focus on the family and staying together and raising their children? And he went, Adam, how are they going to do that when all the dads are in jail? And I was like, I think you're making my point here, Fitzdog. They didn't just all get sucked up by a shop vac and thrown into jail. There's something that was going on that got them to that point. And I'm not saying let's spring all those guys from jail and get them back to renew their vows.
I hear what you're saying.
What I'm saying is let's start to turn let's see if we can bend the stream a little bit so it's not going to jail.
I mean, I said this in that same Black Lives Matter debate. We were talking about this, and I said I'm still waiting for somebody to show me the white racist who's pointing a gun at the black man having sex with the black woman and saying, okay, I want you to impregnate her and then leave. Right? That's not white racism. That's individuals making very, very poor moral decisions. It is a moral thing. I'm sorry. You abandon a woman who you impregnate. That makes you a bad person. I'm sorry. It does. Like I got married, and then I got married specifically in order so that when I have kids, this is why people get married. This is the real reason for marriage. Okay. The real reason for marriage is not two people who love each other. You can do that, for $100 down on Hollywood and Vine. Okay. The real reason you get married is because you're going to produce children within a union that is created for the benefit of the children. That's why marriage matters. It's why divorce has been so harmful.
Yep.
I'm sorry. No, it is.
I'm not religious at all, but I felt that way. Exactly. I felt like as long there's no reason to get married if you don't want to have kids.
Well, the reason that we get along, by the way, is because I'm a deeply religious guy. I don't do religious arguments. I don't think that they're valuable.
Yeah.
As a typical rule. I just don't.
Well, the problem with the religious argument is we want to crunch some numbers and some data and arrive at a solution.
Right.
Me and Dennis Prager going off and do a gig and him going, how can you say there's not a God? How did that flower get there? And I'll go, some Mexican planted it. He got it from Home Depot.
But before you tell me.
Before that. And
how
it's
did
like
the Mexican get there?
Yeah. This is a thing that'll just keep going.
Right.
And there is no, I'm going to pull some stats. I'm going to lay them on you and I'm going to give you a plan. I want to deal in life. I want all life's problems to deal like you went and met with a nutritionist. And that nutritionist did this. Like whatever life's problem is, that life's problem walked into that nutritionist's office and they said, let's put you on the scale. Mm-hmm. Let's see where you're at. Ooh, okay. Some people you could lose 10 pounds. Some people are morbidly obese. Like, okay, let's do it.
The cholesterol's too high.
Right. Now let's put together a plan of action to either deal with, you could lose 8 pounds, look a little better on the raft with the model that I was talking about earlier, or, hey man, you may die in the next 6 to 8 months. Like, that's a different plan. Let's start focusing on a plan. Anyway, you've stepped off the scale. Let's get the body mass index thing. Let's get the fat. Let's work up some blood. And now let's chart a course.
Exactly.
And what those people do is they sit down and they're sort of realistic. They'll go like, what do you really like? What can you not do without? And the person will go like, I like my French fries. I can't help it. Okay, once a week you're allowed to have French fries. And now let's start shaping breakfast. And then they lay out a thing and that's it.
But you know what's interesting is I think most people don't actually, obviously, most people don't want the plan. They just want to bitch about their life. Like I have this rule with my wife, actually. This is why we have a great relationship. We've been married for 8 years and we have a couple kids. One of the reasons that we do is because I instituted a rule pretty early on and she agreed to it, which is fantastic of her. And the rule goes like this. When she comes home and she tells me that she has a problem in her life, before we even start the rest of the conversation, I say, okay, is this a complaining conversation or is this a solutions conversation?
Tim asked the same thing. My boyfriend does the same thing.
It's imperative that guys do this because otherwise you'll give a solution and she'll just get pissed at you for trying to solve the problem.
Thank you.
In our politics, it's the same thing. We keep saying to our politicians, we want you to solve the problem. We want you to solve it. And then the minute someone comes along and says, okay, here's the solution. Stop being a jerk. We go, no, that doesn't take into account how I feel about things. Like, tell me about my feelings. Right. Validate me.
Right.
I'm sorry, government is not here to validate you. Even in the gay marriage decision, regardless of what you think about gay marriage, one of the things the Supreme Court said in the gay marriage decision was the government must give gay marriage in order to confer dignity upon your marriage.
Right.
Okay, the government has never conferred dignity on me for anything. Are you kidding? Like, I have 2 marital documents. I have my religious marital document that I care about because it meant I could have sex with my wife. And then I have my secular one that means nothing to me and is buried somewhere in my tax documents, right? The government doesn't confer dignity. The government can't make you feel good. The government doesn't care about your kids. The government doesn't even know your kids' names. They have tax ID numbers.
I have said a version of this many times, which is stop looking for something for somebody who does not know, doesn't care, and is incapable of doing anything. Do not pin all your hopes and dreams on these people. Focus, education, family, my friends. Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Especially if that dude, he or she who's sitting around is going, we were protesting the Vietnam War and getting shot at by the security or, National Guard, or we were fighting for black folk to get the right to march or vote or assemble or whatever it is and getting fire hosed. Now these guys are going into their safe space because Milo has a few thoughts.
And it all falls under the very big umbrella of protesting. In fact, it's very different.
Right. And so they're putting their checkbooks back in their desk.
Interesting. I never heard that, but that makes sense, I guess.
If you think about it, like if you were that dude who was 6 years old and out there marching with Martin Luther King and people being kidnapped and burned in their cars and fire hose and, dogs and everything else and all the imagery you saw back then or Vietnam War, whatever, the women's rights, like whatever it was, the struggle, the real struggle. And now it's, Milo's coming to talk and, he's bleached his hair and I don't like what's coming out of his mouth. Milo, sorry.
Brian.
Well,
either way, bleach it, kills the germs. But either way, I don't think that's working for them in terms of cutting checks. It makes sense. All right. That's
Charles, I want to ask you a question. So your default is that when there is no evidence, racism is the deciding factor. That is
no, I was not saying that. I'm just saying that you're going to have sexists, you're going to have racists, you're going to have all this stuff. I'm just saying that. I
agree it exists, but the problem that I'm seeing, and this is the problem with the general conversation, is that there's no solution in simply saying there's racism out there. How does that solve anything? I mean, when you talk about there's institutional racism, what does that mean? Show me a law that is racist in intent, and we will agree. Show me a police officer who commits a racist act, like we saw in South Carolina, right, where a police officer shot a black man running away, and it was obviously unjustified, and I will agree. But you need the idea that you can craft a narrative based on no racism because it just must be somewhere out there in the ether, that doesn't solve problems for anybody and creates more problems for people because now they grow up in a milieu and an environment where they are told that every obstacle they face is from some shadowy, nameless, faceless group who's out to get them simply because of the color of their skin. They'll never succeed in that environment.
That wasn't the Black Lives Matter one. Gary screwed up the order a little bit, but That's all right.
Is he your son that you forgot about? Because man, that was eerie. I mean, the language, it was so familiar to things we've talked about.
Well,
your son is gay.
See, Ben Shapiro's here. He's going to be in a couple of few. What we got a couple of ballsy Ben Shapiro clips. I just went to YouTube this afternoon. And I
you
love
have a particular order you want to go in, or
let's see. What is the first? What was the first one? Was it Black Lives Matter?
The first
one?
one's him up there with the Black Lives Matter. He's talking about inequality and how it's about about race and not.
Yeah, again, it's one thing to do it from the comfort and safety of your own podcast or even your own living room. He does it. He goes to the.
He takes his message to the people.
He takes it to the visiting team's house.
He's a radio, looks like a panel or something, Q&A?
Yeah, it looks like an Asian woman and a black man and a black woman up there with him. The brother has sort of an English
They're just
accent.
people, Adam. They're just people.
That's right. I don't see color. All right, let the Jew talk.
Just because there's inequality does not mean there was inequity.
But there has to be racism. You can't say there's no racism.
Without evidence?
No. I'm just saying that I don't know which animal. Maybe we're talking about dogs or something. I'm talking about human beings, and I'm like, human beings are most likely going to have racial prejudices. I'm just so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I don't know. I don't come from. I don't come. I come from planet.
Security issues. Although
not enough safe spaces.
Again, that's it's
quite a feather in your cap's what it is.
Well, campuses have never, in the rich history, have never, to me, had guys not speak because of security issues. I don't think. I mean, occasionally there'd be some Klan rally or something. I'm trying to think. Ben Shapiro or Milo. That's not a security thing.
Yeah, a lot of the campuses operate under the guise of the higher learning. Let's involve all opinions and all shades of discourse, and oftentimes it's not that.
It's not going that way. You know, it's an interesting statistic. Some are better than others, but most are bad statistically. Colleges aren't getting money from the alumni at the rates they were. Because there's a bunch of 52-year-old dudes sitting around going, fuck those pussies. I'm not cutting them a check.
Interesting.
They're sitting there with their safe rooms, and they got their teachers pushing around, cameramen and all this kind of stuff. And they're all sitting around going, this isn't what I remember, and it's not what I support. Right. It's an interesting consequence of getting too much publicity. All right. Ben Shapiro's coming in here, our good friend Ben Shapiro. He's a courageous dude. He does not, look, it's one thing to yap about things in the security and the comfort of your own podcast. I gotta go out and sit in a whole crowd of Black Lives Matter and explain to them why they're wrong, which, it's a pretty ballsy move. Good day, Gina Grad.
Good day to you.
And Bald Brian.
Black people are genetically inferior.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. Right out of the gate.
Jesus. Lest we forget.
He is, he's, I think Harvard is where he went. UCLA. We'll figure it out when Ben comes in here. He's
a bit of a Doogie Howser situation. Graduated very early.
Yeah, he's a genius. He'd make a horrible politician because all he does is examine whatever the problem is and then just explain how it gets solved, which is the exact opposite of Gavin Newsom.
Black people have a tendency toward crime.
Jesus, Ben.
So he'll come in here, and he's also, like our friend Milo, been pulled off the speaking circuit as well because or Milo, I can't remember Milo. He's been pulled off because